My son came home from school on a Thursday with mud on his shoes and someone else's jacket. That's the first thing I noticed. Not the jacket itself, not right away. Just that the color was wrong. Owen only ever wore blue or gray, the way kids get locked into colors around age 8 and treat it like a personal law. This one was olive green, and it was too big for him, hanging off his shoulders like something borrowed from an older kid. He dropped his backpack by the door the way he always did, right in the middle of the hallway where I would trip over it, which I had asked him not to do maybe 400 times, and he went straight to the kitchen and opened the fridge and stood there staring into it. Normal. Completely normal. I asked about the jacket. He said a kid named Dylan let him borrow it because he'd gotten cold at recess. I said, okay. I said we'd return it tomorrow. He said, okay. He ate a bowl of cereal for a snack even though I had told him dinner was in an hour, which was also normal. Owen ate like someone who had been told food might be discontinued, and I let it go and went back to the laundry I had been folding on the couch. It wasn't until after dinner that I noticed the voicemail. I had missed a call at 2:47 p.m., right in the middle of a conference call I couldn't step away from. The number wasn't saved in my phone. Local area code, for digits I didn't recognize. The kind of number that usually turns out to be a spam call about my car's extended warranty. I almost didn't listen to it. I almost deleted it without pressing play. I don't think about that much anymore. There's no point. But sometimes late at night when the island is quiet and the only sound is the water against the rocks outside, I think about how close I came to just swiping it away. The voicemail was 41 seconds long. The first few seconds were just background noise, a hallway, maybe, the hollow echo of a large indoor space, footsteps somewhere distant, the low hum of a ventilation system. The kind of ambient sound that tells you the person calling was somewhere institutional, a school, a hospital, a government building. Then a voice, female, older, maybe late 50s, speaking fast and low like someone who was worried about being overheard. Mr. Calloway, this is Patricia Hesse. I'm the substitute today in Owen's class. Mrs. Alderman is out sick. I need you to listen to this carefully, and please don't call the school office to follow up, because I don't think that's safe right now. I've been teaching for 30 years and I know how this is going to sound. But something happened today in the building and it started with the kids who came back from the overnight trip, and I think Owen is fine. I think he was out sick Tuesday so he missed it, but I need you to check him tonight. Really check him. Look at his eyes and ask him something only he would know, and if anything seems wrong please don't wait. Just take him and go. I'm sorry I can't say more. I'm in the copy room and I don't have much time. Then the sound of a door opening somewhere close to her. Then the line went dead. I stood in the kitchen with the phone against my ear for probably 10 seconds after it ended. Just holding it there. The way you do when you're waiting for the message to keep going, when your brain hasn't fully processed that it's over. Then I played it again. My name is Daniel Calloway. I'm 38 years old. I work in logistics for a regional shipping company, which means I spend most of my time on the phone and in spreadsheets and very occasionally driving out to the warehouse on Merritt Road to walk the floor with a clipboard and feel useful. I am not a dramatic person. I don't believe in conspiracies. I pay my taxes and I read the ingredients on food labels, and I once spent 40 minutes on hold with the pharmacy to make sure Owen's allergy medication wouldn't interact with his vitamin D supplement. I say this because I want you to understand that when I walked to Owen's bedroom doorway and looked in at him sitting at his desk doing his homework, pencil in his right hand, sneakers still on because he never remembered to take them off, I did not immediately panic. My first reaction was the same one I'd have if someone told me there was a gas leak 2 streets over. Not fear exactly. More like a shift in attention, a recalibration of what was worth paying close attention to. Owen is 9. He's in 4th grade at Millhaven Elementary, which is about 8 minutes from our house on Drexter Road, the last subdivision before the town gives way to the kind of flat open farmland that makes this part of Ohio feel very large and very empty at the same time. We moved here 4 years ago after my divorce from Cara, me and Owen, because the school district had a good reputation and the mortgage was something I could manage alone. His teacher, Mrs. Alderman, had been with him since September. She was maybe 55, red-haired, the kind of woman who decorated her classroom for every minor holiday and still managed to cover the curriculum. Owen liked her. He talked about her the way kids talk about teachers they feel safe with, not enthusiastically, just consistently. She was just there, steady, known. I had never heard of Patricia Hesse. I typed the name into my browser. There was a Patricia Hesse listed on the district substitute teacher registry. I found it through the school's website. Her photo was small and low resolution, but it matched the voice somehow. The kind of face that matches a voice like that. Careful eyes, a set to the jaw that suggested someone who had spent decades managing rooms full of children and still took it seriously. She had 31 years of experience. Her certifications were current. She was real. I put the phone down and went to Owen's doorway again. "Hey, bud." He looked up. "What? How was school today?" He shrugged. "Fine. Anything happen?" Another shrug. "Not really. We had a substitute. She was okay." "What happened to Mrs. Alderman?" He went back to his worksheet. "She wasn't there." "I don't know." I watched him for a moment, pencil moving, sneakers on, the little furrow between his eyebrows when he was working out a math problem. Everything looked right. Everything looked like Owen. I went back to the kitchen and played the voicemail a third time. Ask him something only he would know. I thought about that. What would that mean? I knew Owen's facts, his birthday, his allergies, his best friend's name. But Patricia Hesse wasn't talking about facts. She was talking about something more specific, something interior, something that couldn't be reconstructed from a school record or a parent portal login. I went back to his room and sat on the edge of his bed. He looked up again, a little wary this time, the way kids get when a parent sits down with that particular energy. "Remember your fish," I said. His face changed immediately, not dramatically, just a small softening around the eyes. "Copernicus." "Yeah. What did you do when he died?" "I cried," he said. "And then I asked you if fish had souls and you said you didn't know but you hoped so." "Yeah. And then we buried him in the backyard by the fence and you let me stay home the next day." I breathed. "Yeah, bud. That's right." That was Owen. The way he remembered things, the order he put them in, the detail he kept about what I had said. That was my son. I said goodnight and went back downstairs and sat at the kitchen table with my phone and tried to decide what to think. Here's what I knew. A substitute teacher I had never met had left me a voicemail warning me to check my son after some kind of incident involving kids who had come back from an overnight trip. She had said she didn't think calling the school was safe. She had sounded afraid but not unhinged, and she had not called back. Here's what I didn't know. What the incident was, where Mrs. Alderman actually was, which kids had been on the overnight trip, and whether Patricia Hesse was still in that building. Owen hadn't been on any overnight trip, that much I knew for certain. He had been homesick on Tuesday with a low fever that broke by Wednesday morning. Nothing unusual. Just a cold that had been circling the school for weeks according to the class newsletter. I texted my neighbor, Joanne Barth, whose daughter Piper was in Owen's class. "Hey, random question. Was Piper on the 4th grade trip Tuesday?" She responded in about 3 minutes. "Yeah, the science center trip." "Why, did Owen miss it?" "Poor kid." "Yeah, he was sick." "Did she have a good time?" A pause. Longer than the first one. "She said it was fine. She's been kind of quiet since she got back actually." I figured she was tired. "Why?" I said never mind, thanks. Just checking in. I put the phone on the table and looked at the dark window above the sink. My own reflection staring back at me. A 38-year-old man in a logistics company polo shirt sitting in a kitchen that smelled like the pasta I'd made an hour ago, holding a phone with a 41-second voicemail on it from a woman I had never met. Piper Barth had been quiet since she got back. I thought about that word. Quiet. The way Joanne had typed it, without explanation, like she'd noticed it but hadn't decided what to make of it yet. I set an alarm for 6 a.m. and went to bed. I didn't sleep. At some point around midnight, I heard Owen get up to use the bathroom. I tracked his footsteps down the hall, the flush, the footsteps back. Everything normal. Everything in the right order. I lay in the dark and listened to the house settle and thought about what kind of overnight trip ends with kids coming back quiet. The science center was about 40 minutes from Millhaven. I had driven past it once years ago, before Owen was in school here. A state-funded natural history museum with a planetarium and an agricultural exhibit and what I remembered as a very long parking lot. The kind of place that organized school trips because it was educational enough to justify the permission slips. Nothing about it seemed alarming. Nothing about any of this seemed alarming on paper. But Patricia Hesse had 31 years of experience, and she had hidden in the copy room to make a phone call and told me not to call the school. I got up at 5:30 and made coffee and went to Owen's room and stood in the doorway and watched him sleep for a moment. His face loose and young and unmistakably his. Copernicus, he'd said. I cried and then I asked you if fish had souls. Still him, still mine, still okay. I made his breakfast and woke him at 6:30 and watched him eat his cereal and complain about having to wear pants instead of shorts because it was getting cold, and I thought, I'm going to call the school this morning. And then I thought about Patricia Hesse saying, I don't think that's safe right now. And I thought about calling the school versus not calling the school and what each choice cost me if I was wrong. If I called and nothing was wrong, I was the overreacting single dad who'd been spooked by a substitute's strange voicemail. Mildly embarrassing. Forgotten by Monday. If I didn't call and something was wrong. I didn't finish the thought. I drove Owen to school and watched him walk through the front doors and merge with the stream of kids in the hallway and disappear, and I sat in the car in the drop-off lane for probably 2 minutes longer than I should have before the car behind me tapped its horn. I went to work. I could not focus on work. At 9:15 I called Patricia Hesse's number back. The one the voicemail had come from. It rang 5 times and went to a generic voicemail, no name, just the robotic please leave a message prompt. I left one. I said, this is Daniel Calloway, you called me yesterday about my son Owen, please call me back, I'd like to talk. She didn't call back. At 10:40 I called the school's main number. The secretary, a woman named Linda who had answered this phone for as long as I'd been a parent in this district, picked up on the second ring. Millhaven Elementary. How can I help you? Her voice was normal, exactly normal, the same slightly tired warmth it always had. Hi Linda, this is Daniel Calloway, Owen Calloway's father, 4th grade. Oh, hi Mr. Calloway, what can I do for you? I just wanted to check in. Owen mentioned Mrs. Alderman was out yesterday. Is she doing okay? A brief pause, not long, just a half beat. Mrs. Alderman is out on medical leave. She'll be back when she's feeling better. We have a substitute in the meantime. Is Patricia Hesse still in the classroom? This pause was longer. I'm sorry. The substitute yesterday. Patricia Hesse. Is she still assigned to Owen's class? Let me check on that for you, Mr. Calloway. Can you hold for just a moment? The hold music was the same instrumental pop it had always been. The kind that sounds like it was composed specifically to be inoffensive and ends up being slightly unsettling because of how hard it's trying. She came back after about 90 seconds. I'm showing that we have a substitute assigned through the district. I don't have the specific name in front of me right now, but I can have the office manager call you back this afternoon. You have to understand what she wasn't saying. She wasn't saying Patricia Hesse was still there. She wasn't saying Patricia Hesse had been relieved. She was giving me the shape of an answer without the substance, the bureaucratic equivalent of closing a door without locking it. Can I ask? Is everything okay at the school today? Nothing unusual going on. Everything is running normally, Mr. Calloway. Is there something specific I can help you with? No, I said. No, I'll wait for the callback. Thank you, Linda. I hung up and sat at my desk and looked at the wall. Running normally. I pulled up the school's class portal and looked at Owen's attendance record. Present today. Checked in at 8:52, nothing flagged. I looked up the Science Center field trip. It was listed in the October newsletter as a Tuesday enrichment activity for 4th grade science. Standard parent permission slip, box lunches, depart at 8, return by 3, 22 students and 3 adult chaperones. 22 students. I thought about Piper Barth being quiet. And I thought about the specific word Patricia Hesse had used. The kids who came back from the overnight trip. Overnight. The newsletter said day trip. Depart at 8, return by 3. That was a day trip, not an overnight. I read it again. Depart Tuesday at 8 a.m., expected return by 3 p.m. But Patricia Hesse had said overnight. I stared at that for a long time. Either the voicemail was wrong, or the newsletter was wrong. Or something had changed between when the newsletter was sent and when the kids actually came back. I called Joanne Barth. She answered on the third ring, slightly breathless. Hey, Joanne. Quick question about the field trip. Piper was back Tuesday afternoon, right? Before dinner? A pause that felt just slightly too long for a simple question. She was back around 4:30. The bus was a little late. Did she seem tired? Like, more than usual? I mean, she said she had a headache. I thought it was just the bus ride. Did she say anything about where they went? What the center was like? Not really. She just said it was a long day. Daniel, what is this about? You asked me about this last night. I didn't know how to answer her without sounding like I'd lost my mind, so I said the first version of a smaller truth. I said I'd gotten a message from the school about something that might have happened on the trip and I was just trying to get a clearer picture. What kind of message? She said. Probably nothing, I said. First lie. The kind that comes out clean because you haven't finished deciding yet. I picked Owen up at 3:15 instead of letting him ride the bus. I was already in the drop-off loop when the doors opened. He seemed surprised to see me, a little pleased. You're early, he said. Yeah, took the afternoon off. He climbed in and dropped his bag between his feet and started telling me about a worksheet on ecosystems. I listened to him talk all the way home. The words, the rhythm, the way he circled back to mention that a kid in class had drawn a shark in the ocean ecosystem section even though the assignment was freshwater. Still Owen. Still right. Still mine. But I was watching him the way Patricia Hesse had told me to. And somewhere around the third traffic light I noticed something I couldn't immediately place. It was small. It was so small I thought I'd imagined it at first. It was the way he was looking out the window. Not at anything specific, not distracted the way kids get distracted when something catches their eye. Just looking, steadily, evenly, at the passing houses and cars and trees, with a calm that was a half-degree different from how Owen Calloway usually sat in the passenger seat. Owen fidgeted. Owen asked questions about things he saw. Owen pointed at trucks and dogs and once, memorably, at a man walking a cat on a leash. He was just watching. Quietly. I didn't say anything. I got home and made dinner and helped with homework and watched him closely, and everything I saw was close enough to normal that I could have talked myself out of the feeling. But I didn't. Because Patricia Hesse hadn't called back, and the newsletter said day trip and she had said overnight, and Piper Barth was quiet and had a headache. After Owen went to bed, I went to the backyard and stood in the cold with my phone and called the non-emergency line for the Millhaven police. It rang 6 times. Someone picked up. Millhaven PD. Hi, I'm a parent at Millhaven Elementary and I had a question about whether anything happened at or near the Dawson Science Center on Tuesday. A school group was there and... Can I get your name, sir? Daniel Calloway. A pause. Keyboard sounds. I'm not showing any incident reports from that location on Tuesday, sir. Everything okay? Probably, yeah. I just got a message from the school that worried me and I wanted to check. What kind of message? I thought about how to answer that. I thought about saying a voicemail from a substitute teacher who hid in the copy room to call me. I thought about how that would sound. General safety concern, I said. I can have someone follow up with the school district tomorrow morning if you'd like to file a concern. No, that's okay. Thank you. I hung up and stood there in the cold backyard with the phone in my hand and the neighbor's porch light throwing a pale square of yellow across the fence. Through Owen's bedroom window upstairs I could see the glow of his nightlight. The small one shaped like a moon that he had insisted was babyish last year and then quietly kept anyway. I went inside and locked the door. Both locks. The deadbolt I usually left until bedtime. And then I stood in the hallway for a moment and listened to the house. The refrigerator hum, the furnace cycling, the sound of Owen's breathing through the baby monitor I had kept in the hallway long past when most parents would have turned it off. Because I was a single father and the house was sometimes very quiet and I liked knowing he was there. His breathing was even, steady, normal. But when I turned off the kitchen light and the hallway went dark, I stood there thinking about 2 things. The way he had looked out the window at nothing. And the fact that he hadn't once mentioned Dylan, the kid who had lent him the jacket, had not mentioned a single person by name from his day, which for Owen, who catalogued his classmates with the dedication of someone building a reference file, was not nothing. I went to bed. I did not sleep well. And at 3 in the morning, my phone lit up with a text from a number I didn't recognize. 4 words. Don't send him tomorrow. I stared at that text for a long time. 4 words, no punctuation at the end, no explanation, no name. Don't send him tomorrow. I typed back immediately. Who is this? No response. I tried calling the number. It rang twice and then went to a dead tone, not voicemail, not a disconnect message, just a flat electronic nothing like calling into an empty room. I put the phone on the nightstand and lay in the dark with my eyes open and thought about whether 4 words from an unknown number in the middle of the night should be enough to change what I did in the morning. The rational answer was no. The rational answer was that unknown numbers send strange texts all the time, wrong numbers, spam, automated systems with glitched recipient lists. The rational answer was that I had already checked Owen twice and he had passed both times and the police had no incident reports from the science center and Linda at the front desk had said everything was running normally. But Patricia Hesse had said don't call the school. And now someone I couldn't identify was saying don't send him tomorrow. And Piper Barth was quiet. I got up at 5 again and made coffee again and sat at the kitchen table and tried to build a list of what I actually knew versus what I was inferring from incomplete information. What I knew, a substitute teacher named Patricia Hesse had left me a voicemail expressing fear about something that had happened involving kids returning from a trip. She had used the word overnight when the newsletter said day trip. She had not called back. She had not been reachable by phone since someone using an unregistered number had texted me in the middle of the night warning me not to send Owen to school. My neighbor's daughter Piper had returned from the same trip quieter than usual with a headache. Owen himself had been behaving almost normally, but with a quality of stillness I couldn't fully account for. What I didn't know, what the incident actually was, what the difference between day trip and overnight meant, whether Mrs. Alderman's absence was related, whether Patricia Hesse was okay, and whether the thing I was feeling about Owen was a real signal or a father's brain eating itself alive from anxiety at 3 in the morning. I went upstairs and pushed Owen's door open quietly. He was asleep on his side, facing the wall, one arm hanging off the edge of the mattress the way he always slept, like he'd fallen that way mid-motion and never finished whatever he'd been doing. I watched him breathe. Even, steady. I went back downstairs and made a decision that felt less like a choice and more like inevitability. I was not sending him to school. I called in sick for myself, which I hadn't done in 8 months, and I texted the school attendance line that Owen was running a fever, which was the easiest lie available and the one that required the least follow-up. And then I sat at the kitchen table and waited for Owen to wake up and thought about what I was actually going to do with this day. Owen came downstairs at 7:20. He looked at me sitting there in my regular clothes instead of work clothes and frowned the way he did when the expected sequence of events had been disrupted. "Why are you still here?" "Taking a day," I said. "You too." He looked at me for a moment with that particular Owen expression, the one that meant he suspected something but was weighing whether to push on it. "Okay," he said, and sat down and ate his cereal. I watched him eat. I watched his hands around the bowl, the way he tilted it for the last of the milk, the small sound he made when he found a particularly large piece at the bottom. All of it textbook Owen. And yet, he hadn't asked why. Owen always asked why. Owen had once asked me 17 consecutive why questions about the life cycle of a star after a school assignment on astronomy, and I had eventually had to look up 3 of the answers. He was a kid who wanted the reason behind the reason behind the reason. He had just said, okay. I told myself he was tired, told myself it was early, told myself I was cataloging every small thing with a bias toward suspicion and calling that observation. But I kept watching. After breakfast I told him we were going to go for a drive. Just out of the house, no specific destination. He agreed easily, put on his shoes, got in the car without asking where we were going. I drove to the Dawson Science Center. Not to go in. I didn't have a plan beyond wanting to see the building, wanting to put eyes on the physical location that Patricia Hesse had connected to whatever she'd seen. The way sometimes when something feels unreal you need to look at the concrete version of it to make it sit still in your mind. The Science Center was on a county road about 35 minutes east of Millhaven, A low, wide building set back from the road behind a long parking lot, exactly as I remembered it. Brown brick, institutional, with a large sign out front showing a stylized atom and the words Dawson County Science and Nature Center. A place that looked like it had been built in the 80s and renovated just enough in the 90s to feel dated in a specific era rather than generally old. The parking lot was almost empty. One staff car near the entrance, one county vehicle near the side of the building, and a white van with no markings parked at the far end of the lot facing away from the road. I pulled in and stopped near the entrance without getting out. Owen was looking at the building. "This is where your class went on Tuesday," I said. He didn't react the way I expected him to. "No, oh yeah, or I remember, or that's right." He just looked at it for a moment and said, "Yeah. Did you have a good time?" Long pause. The kind that a 9-year-old doesn't normally have before answering a simple social question. "It was okay. What did you do when you were there?" "We looked at stuff," he said. "Fossils and things." "What kind of fossils?" "I don't remember," he said. I turned to look at him. He was still watching the building. His face was neutral, pleasant even, the edges of his expression arranged into a kind of mild calm that looked correct from a distance but wasn't right up close. The same thing I'd noticed in the car the day before, a half-degree off from Owen. Owen would have remembered the fossils. Owen had a memory for specifics that had once allowed him to recite every dinosaur species from a birthday book he'd been given at age 6 in the order they appeared in the geological record. He didn't forget the fossils. "Do you remember what building you were in?" I asked. "The main one," he said. "Did you go anywhere else?" Another pause. "I don't think so," he said. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the lot. And as I did I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the white unmarked van and noticed for the first time that it was running. Exhaust coming from the back, faint but visible in the cold morning air. Idling, in an almost empty parking lot, pointed away from the building, at 7:50 in the morning. I drove home. I needed to talk to someone with actual information, not a voicemail and a text and a van that might mean nothing. I thought about who I could call. Kara was in Columbus and hadn't been involved with the school community in 2 years. My brother Pete was 3 states away and would start with "Have you thought about talking to someone?" meaning a therapist. My friend Marcus worked at the district office, not this district, but close enough that he might know how to look up a substitute teacher's assignment history without triggering a formal inquiry. I texted Marcus. "Quick question. Can you find out if a sub-teacher from Lakeview District got reassigned or pulled from an assignment recently? Just need to know if someone is still placed at a school." He responded 20 minutes later. "I can try. What's the name?" "Patricia Hesse." A longer pause this time. Then, "Where'd you get that name?" Which was a strange response. I typed back. "She subbed at Owen's school. Why?" His reply took 4 minutes and when it came it was not what I expected. "Dan, I'm going to call you. Don't text about this." He called 30 seconds later. His voice was lower than normal, not whispering, but contained, the way you talk in a hospital corridor. "How do you know Patricia Hesse?" "She left me a voicemail about Owen's school. She sounded scared. She hasn't called back." "Why, what is she to you?" "She's not anything to me," he said. "But her name came up in something I heard about 2 days ago, something that's been getting passed around at the district level. Do you know about the Dawson Center incident?" There it was. There was the word, incident. "What incident?" I said. He was quiet for a moment. I could hear him moving, a door closing, footsteps. "Okay, what I know is third hand, so don't hold me to specifics. But apparently there was a call that came into the district office on Tuesday evening from the Science Center. Some kind of situation involving one of the school groups that had been there that day. I don't know what exactly happened, but the call went up the chain fast, health department fast, and the next day the center was closed for what they were calling routine maintenance." "It's not closed," I said. "I was just in the parking lot." Silence. "You were at the center this morning." "In the parking lot. I didn't go in." "Were there any vehicles there?" "A staff car, a county vehicle, and a white van with no markings that was running." Another silence. Longer. "Dan, I need to ask you something and I need you to answer me straight. Is Owen okay?" The question landed wrong, Not because Marcus asked it badly but because of the specific way he asked it. Not is Owen sick, not is everything fine at home. Is Owen okay? The okay doing a lot of weight-bearing work. He seems mostly fine, I said. But there are a couple of things that feel slightly off. His memory from the trip is fuzzy. He's been more still than usual. He was on the trip. No, I said. He was home sick Tuesday. He wasn't there. The exhale on Marcus's end was audible. Okay, he said. Okay, that's okay. Marcus. I don't know enough to tell you what to do, he said. But I know that Patricia Hesse filed a formal concern with the substitute placement office Wednesday morning and was told to withdraw it, and then she stopped responding to the placement coordinator's calls, and there is a flag on her file that I should not be able to see, and I only saw it by accident because my supervisor pulled up the wrong screen during a meeting. What kind of flag? The kind that says do not place without supervisor approval. The kind they put on people when there's a liability concern. They flagged her to keep her quiet, I said. I don't know what they did, he said. But Dan, if your kid wasn't on the trip, if he wasn't there, why does he seem off? I didn't have an answer for that. I looked through the kitchen window into the living room where Owen was sitting on the couch watching television. His hands in his lap, his face toward the screen, absolutely still in the way he had been still since yesterday. Proximity, I would learn later. The word I didn't have yet. But I was already living inside its meaning. What do? I said. I don't know, Marcus said. But I wouldn't wait for more information. He hung up and I stood in the kitchen for a long time and then I texted Joanne Barth one more time. Joanne. I need to know how Piper is right now. Not yesterday. Right now. Can you call me? She called in 2 minutes, and when she spoke I could hear something in her voice that she had been keeping out of her texts. A flatness, a restraint, the way a person sounds when they've been waiting for someone to ask them the direct question so they could stop pretending they weren't scared. She's sitting at the table, Joanne said. She's been sitting there for 2 hours. She had breakfast but she didn't talk through it. She keeps looking at the window. Dan, she hasn't looked at her phone since she got home Tuesday. She's 12. She's never not on her phone. Has she said anything about the trip? She said it was fine. She said it exactly like that. It was fine. 3 times when I asked, same words, same voice. I felt the bottom of something drop away. Joanne, I said. I need to ask you something and I need you to tell me the truth. Has she blinked at a normal rate when you've talked to her? Silence. A very long silence. I didn't want to notice that, Joanne said quietly. I told her I'd call her back. I went to the living room doorway and looked at Owen. He was watching the television, some nature documentary about ocean currents. Not a kid's show, not something he would normally choose. He was just watching it with that same mild steady attention he'd been giving everything since yesterday. Owen, I said. He looked at me. What's 2 times 7? 14, he said. What was the name of your 2nd grade teacher? Mrs. Brock, he said. What happened on your 5th birthday? He paused, and in the pause I watched his eyes. They were level, forward-facing, and they blinked twice in the span of 10 seconds. We went to the trampoline park, he said. And I got the cake with the wrong frosting, and I cried, and then you let me pick from the Lego catalog. That was right. That was exactly right. But his eyes had blinked twice in 10 seconds, and a person blinks between 15 and 20 times per minute under normal conditions, which I knew because I had done patient intake at an urgent care clinic for one summer during college and one of the nurses had explained it to me once as a quick and dirty screening tool. Twice in 10 seconds was maybe 12 per minute. Low, but not impossible. But Piper hadn't blinked normally. Joanne hadn't wanted to notice it. I picked up my phone and called the school. Not the main number. The number on the class portal for the classroom itself, the direct line that rang the phone on the teacher's desk. It rang 4 times. Someone picked up. No greeting, just the sound of the room, that same institutional echo from Patricia Hesse's voicemail, the low hum of ventilation. Hello, I said. Breathing, steady, even. Hello, who is this? Everything is fine, Mr. Calloway, said a voice. Female, neutral. Correct pronunciation of my name. Completely flat. The children are learning. Owen is welcome to return tomorrow. Everything is fine. I hung up. My hands were steady. My stomach was not. I went to the living room and turned off the television and said to Owen, "Pack your bag, we're going on a trip." He looked at me for a moment with that level, calm gaze. "Okay," he said. And just like that, the third lie became unnecessary. Because I had stopped pretending there was a version of this where we stayed. We were in the car by 11. I had packed fast. The way you pack when you've given yourself exactly 10 minutes and you know that every minute past 10 is a minute you're spending on judgment calls instead of forward motion. Clothes, Owen's medications, the first aid kit from under the bathroom sink, the emergency cash I kept in the filing cabinet, both our chargers, Owen's inhaler, a box of granola bars from the pantry shelf. I had also packed the olive green jacket. I don't know exactly why. It was still hanging on the hook by the door where Owen had left it the night before, and something made me fold it into a Ziploc bag and put it in the side pocket of my duffel. Some instinct that said this might matter later. The kind of instinct that looks either stupid or prescient depending on how everything turns out. I called Joanne while I was loading the car. I kept my voice even because Owen was 3 feet away putting his backpack in the back seat. "I'm leaving," I said. "I don't know exactly what's happening, but I know enough. If Piper was on that trip, you should think about whether you want to take her somewhere. Somewhere away from here. Dan, she's my daughter. I can't just." "I know," I said. "I know it sounds insane. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you what I'm doing." A long pause. "Where are you going?" "North," I said. And then I thought about why I had said north of all directions and realized it was because the voicemail had said north. Patricia Hesse hadn't said north, she just said take him and go, but the word north had surfaced anyway from somewhere. From the sense that away meant up, that up meant cold and empty and hard to reach. I had a cousin, my father's sister's son, named Robert Vass. He had a hunting camp in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, a 4-hour drive north of where we were sitting in the driveway of our house on Drexter Road. I had been there once, 7 years ago before Owen, when Robert and I had still been close enough to call each other without a reason. It was a simple place. 2 rooms, wood stove, a hand pump in the yard, no cell service past the last paved road. I didn't have Robert's number anymore. We had drifted the way cousins drift after 40. But I remembered the camp, and I needed a direction more than I needed a destination. "I'll call you," I said to Joanne. "Keep your phone on." Owen was quiet in the passenger seat for the first 20 minutes. Not asleep, just watching the road with that steady level gaze I had been tracking since yesterday. I talked to him about the drive, about maybe stopping for lunch, about the Upper Peninsula which he'd never been to. I was monitoring the quality of his responses the way you monitor a patient. Not obtrusively, just always. He answered my questions. He said he was hungry. He said he'd read that the Upper Peninsula had the largest lake-effect snowfall in the country and asked if that was true. That was something Owen would know. That was Owen reaching into his mental reference file for a fact that fit the conversation. But he didn't ask where we were really going. He didn't ask what was wrong. And Owen Calloway always asked what was wrong. Around the 40-minute mark, I tested him again. I asked him what the first word he had ever learned to read was. He was quiet for a moment. "Cat," he said. That was right. Mrs. Brock had sent home a note about it. He had sounded out cat from a reader book and been so pleased with himself that he'd made me take a photo of the page, which I still had somewhere in a folder on my laptop. "And what did you make me do after?" A pause. "Read it to Grandma on the phone." Right again. And wrong. The pause was wrong. That was the kind of memory that should come fast for Owen, the kind of memory a kid keeps polished and close because it was a moment of pride. It should have been instant. The pause was maybe 3 seconds. 3 seconds doesn't sound like much, but in a conversation with a 9-year-old about his own memories, 3 seconds is a gap. I kept driving. Just past the 2-hour mark we crossed into a county I didn't know well, farm country giving way to second-growth forest, the road narrowing slightly and the sky opening up above bare fields. I stopped at a gas station in a town that was barely a town, filled the tank, bought 2 bottles of water and a bag of pretzels and a sandwich from the cooler that had probably been there since yesterday but would do. The attendant was a middle-aged man in a Carhartt jacket reading something on his phone. He looked up when I came in, made a comment about the weather turning, handed me my change without looking at his hands. Human, normal, present. Did you hear anything about something happening at the Dawson Science Center in Millhaven? I asked. I said it casually, the way you ask about local news you half remember hearing. He looked at me. Can't say I have. What happened? Probably nothing, I said. Someone mentioned it at work. That's over in Preston County, he said. Might be something on the local news. I don't really follow it. I thanked him and went back to the car. Owen was sitting exactly where I had left him. Hands in his lap, eyes forward, the same quality of stillness that had been following me since yesterday afternoon like a splinter I couldn't locate. We ate in the car. Owen ate the sandwich without commenting on it, which was notable because Owen had opinions about sandwiches. He had once spent 10 minutes explaining to me why mustard was a foundational condiment and not an optional one. He ate this one without anything. Owen, I said. He looked at me. What's your favorite food? Pizza, he said. Immediately, no pause. What kind? Pepperoni and mushroom. But not the fresh mushrooms, the canned ones because they're softer. Right, exactly right. That particular preference for canned over fresh that he had developed at age 7 and explained to me with an earnestness that I had found both absurd and entirely Owen. He was still in there. I could still find him, but it was like reaching into a room where the lights had been turned down slightly. Everything in the same place, but needing a moment for your eyes to adjust. I called Marcus from the parking lot while Owen finished the pretzels. Where are you? Marcus said immediately, which told me he'd been thinking about me since we'd hung up. I told him we were on the road heading north, that I wasn't sure where yet, that I needed to know if he'd found out anything more about the Dawson Center situation. Some, he said. His voice was still low, still contained. The district health liaison sent a memo to building principals this morning. I wasn't supposed to see it, but somebody CC'd the wrong distribution list. It referenced a protocol review for facilities visited by students in the past 72 hours. It used the phrase precautionary behavioral monitoring. What does that mean? I don't know what it means officially, he said. But the way it was written, the way it was phrased, it read like something you send when you know something has happened but you don't want to name it yet. Behavioral monitoring, I said. Yeah. Owen was home sick Tuesday, I said. He wasn't at the center, but he's been off since yesterday and he's been sitting next to kids who were at the center all day Wednesday. The line was quiet for a moment. How off? Marcus said. I told him about the stillness, the memory latency, the blinking rate, the questions he wasn't asking. He's still answering correctly. Yeah, specific personal memories, he gets them. He's just slower on some of them than he should be, and the spontaneous Owen stuff, the questions, the comments, the pointing at things, it's quieter. Dan, Marcus said carefully. I heard something else this morning. I don't know how accurate it is. I heard it mentioned that the kids who were at the center on Tuesday weren't the only exposure vector. The word they were using was secondary. Secondary. You think Owen got it from being near the other kids? I don't know, he said. But if the center kids came back and went to school Wednesday and sat in classrooms and ate lunch in the cafeteria. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I looked through the windshield at Owen sitting in the car with his hands in his lap and thought about what Patricia Hesse had said in her voicemail. I think Owen is fine. I think he was out sick Tuesday so he missed it, but I need you to check him tonight, really check him. She had thought Owen was safe because he'd missed the trip. She hadn't thought about Wednesday, about a classroom full of kids who had come back changed, breathing the same air, sharing the same space, for an entire school day. Owen, how long have you had that jacket? I said. He looked at me. Since yesterday. Before yesterday. Did you borrow it from Dylan before Wednesday? A pause. No, he said. Did Dylan go on the trip Tuesday? A longer pause, and in it I watched his eyes. One blink. Steady, level, calm. I think so, he said. I had been carrying the jacket in a Ziploc bag in my duffel since we left the house. I didn't know yet what that meant. I didn't have the vocabulary for what I was dealing with, didn't have a category to put it in. But I had packed it, and now I was glad I had packed it, and I filed it away under things to think about later when I wasn't driving and my son wasn't sitting next to me being 92% Owen. I started the car. We drove another 2 hours before we hit the first roadblock. It wasn't dramatic, just a sawhorse barrier across the on-ramp to the highway that would have taken us north, a handwritten sign that said road closed, and a county maintenance truck parked at an angle that made going around it technically possible but clearly discouraged. I took the county road instead, slower, more circuitous, but moving in the right direction. Owen didn't comment on the detour. That was the other thing that would have, under normal circumstances, generated a question. Owen noticed detours. Owen asked about road closures the way other kids asked about weather. He had once memorized an alternate route to his grandmother's house because he'd seen construction on the GPS and wanted to be prepared. He said nothing. Around 4 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed with a call from Kara, Owen's mother, my ex-wife, currently in Columbus where she worked as a hospital administrator, which meant she existed in a world of protocols and incident responses and the kind of institutional language that Marcus had been describing. I answered it. Dan, she said, and her voice was the voice she used when she was in professional mode and something had gone wrong. Controlled, precise, the kind of calm that costs something. Kara, I got a notification from Owen's school about an absence today, and I've been trying to reach you. We're in the car, I said. Where are you going? I told her the same version I'd told Joanne. I told her about the voicemail, the text, Marcus's information about the incident report and the flagged substitute file, what I'd seen in Owen since yesterday. She didn't interrupt. Kara never interrupted when she was processing information. She took it in and then she organized it and then she spoke. Dan, she said. I need to tell you something and I need you to not panic. I looked at Owen sitting quietly next to me watching the road. Okay. I got a communication this morning from the Ohio Department of Health. It went to hospital administrators in a 6-county area. It was a preliminary advisory about an uncharacterized neurological presentation that had been observed in a small number of patients presenting to emergency departments in the past 48 hours. The presentation included blunted affect, reduced spontaneous speech, altered blink rate, coordinated group behaviors. I said nothing. It was labeled as preliminary and unconfirmed, she said. And it explicitly said not to share publicly while investigation was ongoing. But you're sharing it with me. You have my son in a car and I don't know where you're going, she said. Are you coming? A pause. Yes, she said. I'm already in the car. I left 40 minutes ago. Where are we going? I'm trying to find a hunting camp in the Upper Peninsula, I said. My cousin Robert. I don't have his number but I remember where the camp is. Do you have an address? I have a memory of a dirt road that turns off a county highway about 8 miles north of a town called Algonac. It had a green gate. That's not an address, Dan. I know, I said. I'll find an address, she said. The way Kara always said things she intended to do, like they were already done and she was just informing me. Kara, the presentation they described. Don't, she said. I need to say it. I know what you're going to say. Does Owen match it? A pause that felt like she was deciding something. Some of it, she said quietly. I kept my eyes on the road and my voice even and my hands steady at 10 and 2. But he's still answering questions, I said. Personal specific memories. He's still accessing them. That's something, she said. Is it enough? She didn't answer that directly. She said she'd call me when she had the address and to keep heading north. I drove. Owen fell asleep around 4:30, his head against the window, his breathing slow and even. I watched the road and the gray sky above the bare fields and thought about the word Kara had used. Coordinated. Group behaviors. I thought about Piper Barth sitting at the kitchen table for 2 hours not looking at her phone. I thought about Linda at the school front desk and the half-beat pause before she answered my questions. I thought about the phone call to the classroom where someone had answered with no greeting and said, "Everything is fine, Mr. Calloway," in a voice that knew my name and nothing else. I thought about the fact that I had called the classroom number, which rang the phone on the teacher's desk, and whoever had answered it had not been Patricia Hesse. Somewhere around 5 p.m., I passed a gas station that was closed. Lights on inside, door unlocked when I tried it, coffee still warm in the pot on the counter, but no one there. The register open, a $20 bill sitting on the counter next to the key for the bathroom. I took 2 bottles of water and left $40 and wrote on the notepad by the register in case anyone's looking for this place. Left at 5:07 p.m. Everything was here, nothing broken. I don't know why I wrote that. Some reflex toward documentation, toward leaving a record that a person had been here and had been paying attention. Owen was still asleep when I got back to the car. I tucked one of the water bottles next to him and drove. At 6:15 Kara called back with an address. She'd found it through a property record search for Robert Vass in the Upper Peninsula. I put it in the GPS and it showed 4 hours 40 minutes. "I'm 3 hours behind you," she said. "I'll be there around midnight. Keep the door unlocked." "Be careful," I said. "If you see anything that seems wrong, anyone who seems off, don't stop." What does off look like? I thought about how to answer that. I thought about all the small things I had spent 2 days cataloging. The stillness, the pauses, the flat phrasing, the reduced spontaneous behavior, the blink rate, the way a question that should land fast lands slow. "It looks almost normal," I said. "That's the thing. It looks almost normal, and the almost is the part you have to trust." She was quiet for a moment. "Is he okay?" she said, and I knew she wasn't asking about the car ride. "I think some part of him got touched by it," I said. "But he's still him underneath. I can still reach him." "That has to be enough for now," she said. "Yeah," I said. We drove through the dark. Owen woke up around 7 and asked where we were. I told him Michigan. He nodded and looked out the window at the darkness. "Dad," he said, after a while. "Yeah, bud. Something happened at school," he said. I can't remember all of it. But something happened." I looked at him. His face was turned toward me and his eyes were clearer than they'd been since Wednesday. Not all the way clear, but approaching something. Like a signal pushing through static. "I know," I said. "I feel weird," he said. "I know," I said again. "Are we going to be okay?" I reached over and put my hand on top of his and left it there for a moment the way you do when words are the smaller thing and presence is the larger one. "We're going to be okay," I said. Third lie, or true thing. I couldn't tell the difference anymore, and maybe that was exactly right. Maybe the line between believing something and making it true is just the decision not to stop moving forward until it is. We drove another 2 hours in the dark before Owen fell back asleep with his head against my shoulder. And somewhere in that dark, in those 2 hours, with the pine forest closing in on both sides of the highway and the radio giving me nothing but static on every frequency I tried, I thought about Patricia Hesse hiding in a copy room with 31 years of experience and a phone, and the particular courage of someone who has decided the truth is worth saying, even if no one believes it. I thought about the olive green jacket in the Ziploc bag in my duffel. And I thought about how close I had come to sending him to school. We reached the camp at 11:43. The green gate was there, exactly where I remembered it, a tubular steel farm gate padlocked to a cedar post, the paint faded to the color of old moss, the kind of gate that has been opening and closing for 20 years and will keep opening and closing for 20 more because nobody has a reason to change it. The dirt road beyond it wound through dense pine for about a quarter mile before the trees thinned and opened onto a clearing. I could see the outline of the camp in my headlights. Low and dark, a single structure, wood-sided, metal-roofed, with a covered porch along the front and a woodpile stacked against the east wall taller than the door. I had left Robert Vass a voicemail from the road 3 hours earlier. Told him who I was, that I was in a situation, that I needed to use the camp and I would explain everything when I could. He hadn't called back yet. I didn't know if that was because he was asleep, or because he didn't recognize my number, or because something else entirely was preventing him from calling back, which was a thought I pushed firmly away and didn't look at directly. The spare key was under a flat rock near the porch steps. I remembered Robert saying that years ago with the particular carelessness of someone whose camp held nothing worth stealing, which was not the point of a key under a rock but was the logic of a man who spent most of his time alone in the woods and had stopped thinking about it. I carried Owen in from the car. He was deeply asleep, the real sleep of a kid whose body had finally stopped monitoring the situation and let go. He felt right in my arms, the weight of him, the familiar architecture of his shoulder against mine. I got him through the door and onto the cot in the back room and covered him with the blanket from the foot of it and stood there for a moment in the dark listening to him breathe. Even, steady. I went back to the car and brought in the bags, and then I found the light switch, a single bulb overhead in the main room, and looked around at what we had. The camp was one large room with a wood stove in the corner and a small kitchen against the back wall, a table with 4 chairs, shelves along one side holding what looked like a decade's accumulation of hunting gear and paperbacks and mason jars, and the back room with a cot where Owen was sleeping. The wood stove had newspaper and kindling already staged in it, the way prepared people leave things, ready to light without thinking. I lit it and stood there while it caught, and felt the first edge of warmth begin to push back against the cold that had settled into the walls. Robert's pantry was sparse but functional. Canned soup, canned beans, a jar of peanut butter, crackers in a sealed container, rice, a bag of coffee, powdered milk. The kind of stores a man keeps when he comes up here alone for a week at a time and doesn't want to make a grocery run. I made coffee and sat at the table and took stock. Owen was asleep and breathing and had spoken to me clearly in the car, had said something happened and I feel weird, which was a better sign than I had any right to expect given the last 48 hours. Kara was 3 hours behind me and driving carefully and would be here around midnight. I had a camp with a wood stove and 2 weeks of canned food and no cell service past the county road 4 miles back, which meant I also had no way to reach Marcus or Joanne or anyone else until I drove back to that road. That last part was both the worst thing and the best thing about where we were. I sat with my coffee and the crackle of the wood stove and thought about everything I'd been piecing together since Patricia Hess's voicemail. Whatever had happened at the Dawson Science Center on Tuesday had affected the kids who were there. Affected them in a way that was neurological, behavioral, coordinated. The Ohio Department of Health had used words like blunted effect and altered blink rate and group behaviors, and it had spread, not just from the center to the kids but from the kids outward, through proximity, through contact, through the ordinary mechanics of a school day where 22 children who had come back, changed, sat in classrooms and ate lunch and breathed the same recycled air as everyone else. Patricia Hesse had seen it within 1 day of being in that building, had seen enough to hide in the copy room and call a parent she'd never met because she'd noticed Owen had missed the trip and thought he might still be okay. She had been right that he'd missed the primary exposure. She had not been able to account for the secondary one. And now Patricia Hesse was flagged in the substitute placement system and not answering her phone, and I didn't know where she was, and I had stopped letting myself finish that thought since the parking lot of the gas station. I thought about the jacket. The olive green jacket in the Ziploc bag in my duffel. Dylan had been on the trip. Owen had said so, or near enough to so. Dylan had come back on Tuesday and gone to school Wednesday and at some point had taken off his jacket and given it to my son because my son was cold. I didn't know what the vector was exactly. I didn't have a scientist's vocabulary for it. But the jacket felt like evidence of something and I had it sealed in a bag and I was not going to touch it without gloves until someone who understood this better than I did could tell me what it meant. At 12:20, headlights came up the dirt road. I was at the window before the car stopped. Watching the shape of it, the way it moved, the ordinary pulling into a space quality of a driver who is tired and navigating an unfamiliar road in the dark. Kara's rental sedan, dust-coated, one of the headlights slightly dimmer than the other. She got out and she looked like herself, her hair pulled back, her coat collar up, the leather bag she used as both purse and work bag over one shoulder. She walked toward the porch with the purposeful stride of someone who has been in a car for 4 hours and is done being in a car. I met her at the steps. She looked at me for a moment with a specific assessment of someone who spent her professional life reading situations quickly. Then she looked past me at the camp door. "He's sleeping," I said. She nodded. "And still him," I said. Getting clearer, I think. He spoke to me in the car, said he knew something had happened. Something moved in her face that she controlled quickly but not fast enough. The specific grief of a parent who has been holding something at arm's length for hours and just got close enough to feel it. "Good," she said. "That's good." We went inside and she set down her bag and stood by the wood stove with her hands out and let the warmth find her. She had brought supplies from a gas station 2 hours back. Bottled water, protein bars, a first aid kit still in its packaging, and a box of nitrile gloves. I looked at the gloves. "Hospital administrator," she said. "I travel with them." "I have the jacket in a bag," I said. "The one Owen borrowed from the kid who was on the trip." She looked at me. "You kept it." I didn't know why at the time, I said. She thought about that. Good instinct. We sat at the table and she told me what she'd been able to gather from her drive, from the communications she'd had access to on her phone before she'd lost signal. The Ohio DOH advisory had been updated once since the first communication she'd seen. The update had expanded the geographic area of concern from 6 counties to 11. It had added a phrase that had not been in the original: organized behavioral clustering in affected individuals. What does that mean? I said. It means they're not just noticing that affected people behave differently, she said. It means they're noticing that affected people behave similarly to each other, and that the similarity increases with proximity. The more of them there are in a space, the more coordinated the behavior gets. I thought about the come home everything is fine broadcast that I didn't know about yet. I would learn about that later, but sitting at that table I was already building the shape of it in my mind. The way something that started in one building with one school group had spread outward through concentric rings of contact, and was now organizing itself. The kids at the school, I said. All of them. The ones who came back from the center and the ones who were exposed secondarily. And the teachers who were with them, Kara said. And probably some of the parents who picked them up. I thought about Linda at the school front desk, the half-beat pause, the running normally. I thought about whoever had answered the classroom phone and said, "Everything is fine, Mr. Calloway." Mrs. Alderman, I said. Owen's teacher. She was out sick before the trip. I wonder if she was already. Or she came back while the trip was out and got it another way, Kara said. We looked at each other across the table. How far has it spread? I said. I don't know, she said. The last update I saw was 4 hours ago, the 11-county area. But that was a preliminary boundary, not a confirmed one. It's bigger now, I said. Probably, she said. A log shifted in the wood stove. The light in the room moved and settled. Kara, I said. I know, she said. I need to tell you something about Owen. I know, she said again. And her voice was level and professional, and underneath that, held together with something that was just barely enough. He's still there, I said. I keep checking and I keep finding him. It's like something turned the brightness down but didn't change what was on the screen. Does it progress? She said. I don't know. The woman who called me, Patricia Hesse. She said check him and look at his eyes and ask something only he would know. She didn't say anything about it getting worse. She also disappeared, Kara said. She wasn't being cruel. She was being precise. It was one of the things about Kara that had made us difficult as a married couple and was making her invaluable right now. Yeah, I said. We went quiet. The wood stove ticked. Outside the wind moved through the pines with a sound like something breathing slowly and steadily, which I registered and then made myself unregister. Get some sleep, she said. I'll take the first watch. I'm not tired. You've been driving for 6 hours and you've been running on adrenaline since yesterday morning, she said. You're tired. Go check on Owen and then lie down. I'll wake you in 3 hours. I went to the back room and stood in the doorway looking at Owen. He was on his back now, one arm up over his head, his mouth slightly open. The moonlight through the small window put a pale stripe across his bed. His chest rose and fell. Rose and fell. I put his inhaler on the floor next to the cot where he could reach it without sitting up. I thought about the copy of Hatchet in his backpack, the book about a kid who had to survive alone in the wilderness and who he had once told me was the bravest person in any story he'd ever read. Hey, I whispered. He didn't wake up, just breathed. I've got you, I said. I've still got you. I lay down on the floor of the main room with my jacket over me, and my phone face up on my chest waiting for a signal that wasn't coming, and I was asleep within 4 minutes in spite of everything I had told myself about not being tired. Kara woke me at 4 a.m. Her face when I opened my eyes was the face she wore when something had changed and she was deciding how to present it. What? I said. I was sitting up before I finished the word. He's okay, she said immediately. Owen is fine. But there's a truck on the county road. I got up and went to the window. Through the trees, maybe a quarter mile down the dirt road where it met the highway, I could see headlights. Stationary. Engine running, faint exhaust visible in the cold air. How long? I said. About 40 minutes, she said. It pulled in and stopped. It hasn't moved. One vehicle. That I can see, she said. I stood at the window and watched the headlights. They were steady, unmoving. Not parked the way someone parks when they've pulled over to check their phone or look at a map. Parked the way something waits. Did you hear anything? I said. About an hour ago, she said carefully. Before the truck. I heard something on the camp's old shortwave radio. There's one on the shelf. I turned it on just to have something to listen to. And on one of the frequencies. She picked up the radio from the table. A battered handheld with a rubber antenna, the kind hunters and campers keep in cases like this one. She turned it on. Static. And then beneath the static, voices. Not one voice, many. Layered, overlapping, all the same flat mechanical register, all saying the same thing. Come home. Everything is fine. Come home. Everything is fine. Dozens of them. Synchronized with the kind of precision that no group of humans produces naturally. The way a machine produces it, the way a system produces it when all the individual parts have stopped being individual. I stood there holding the radio and listening to it, and felt something very cold and very clear move through me. This wasn't an outbreak in the way I had been thinking about outbreaks. This wasn't people getting sick and recovering or not recovering. This was something organizing itself. Something that had started in a building in a county 40 miles south of where we were standing and was now broadcasting on emergency radio frequencies in a coordinated human voice. It was trying to bring people back. It was calling. I turned off the radio. We need to wake Owen, I said. Owen woke up easier than I expected. Not the groggy resistance of a kid pulled out of deep sleep, but a quiet surfacing, eyes opening, finding me, finding the room, finding Kara standing by the door with her coat on. He took it all in with that same level calm that had been following him since Wednesday. But when he looked at me there was something behind his eyes that had not been there yesterday afternoon. Recognition. Actual, personal recognition. Not the selecting a word from a menu quality I had been watching for. Something warmer and more specific than that. Dad, he said. We're at the camp. Yeah, Bud. We are. I had a dream, he said. There were a lot of people standing outside. Just standing there looking at the window. Kara and I looked at each other over his head. It was just a dream, I said. He sat up and rubbed his face and accepted the granola bar I held out without looking at it. Ate it in 4 bites without comment, which was still not fully Owen, but progress from the sandwich yesterday. His eyes were tracking the room normally, blinking at what looked like a regular rate. I feel better, he said. I think I feel better. Yeah. But I still feel like there's something. Like there's a sound I can almost hear, he said. It's not loud, it's just there. Like when you leave a TV on in another room. I thought about the radio. Does it tell you to do anything? I said. Carefully. Keeping my voice even, the way you ask a kid about a bad dream without making it bigger. He frowned. No. It's not like that. It doesn't say anything. It's more like it knows where I am. I put my hand on the back of his neck the way I had done since he was small, the specific weight of a palm that means I'm here, I've got you. I've got you, I said. He leaned into it slightly. Still my kid. Still reaching for the thing I was offering. We packed in 10 minutes. The food from the pantry, the water bottles Kara had brought, the first aid kit, everything we had come in with. I left $40 on Robert's kitchen table and a note that said thank you and I'll explain everything and I'm sorry for not calling ahead and I hope you're okay. That last part one wrote and then almost crossed out and then left because if he found the note I wanted him to know that someone had been here and had thought about him specifically. The truck was still on the county road when we came down the dirt track. It was a dark blue pickup, older, the kind of farm truck that never fully leaves the area it was built for. It was pulled onto the gravel shoulder facing north, engine running, both hands on the wheel visible through the driver's side window. I slowed down as we came to the junction. Made myself look. The driver was a man, maybe 50, in a canvas work jacket. He was looking straight ahead down the empty road. Not at us. Just ahead. With that quality of attention I had learned to recognize and could not stop recognizing, the quality that looked like patience and was something older and more mechanical than patience. I turned south onto the county road and did not make eye contact and did not accelerate past a normal speed. In my mirror, I watched him. He didn't turn his head. He didn't follow. He just sat there looking north at a road that was empty in both directions and would be empty for a long time. That man, Owen said. Don't look, I said. He's one of them, Owen said. Not a question. Yeah. He was here all night. I think so. Owen was quiet for a moment. Then he said, how did he know where we were? I didn't have an answer for that. I had been not answering that question since Kara had told me about the truck at 4 a.m. The question of how something that worked through proximity and contact had located us at the end of a dirt road in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan that was not in any GPS database I knew of. The question of what organized itself well enough to send a single figure to wait quietly on a county road near where 2 unaffected people and 1 partially affected child were sleeping. I don't know, I said. It's the sound, Owen said quietly. I think it knows where I am because of the sound. We drove south. Kara was in the back seat with Owen, one hand on his knee, her phone out trying to catch a signal in the intermittent way phones do on rural highways. 1 bar, then nothing, then 2 bars, then nothing. She was monitoring the DOH channels through an app that cached updates and she kept reading fragments out loud in a low voice. Affected zone now extending into 12 northern counties. Residents are advised. Static. Naval evacuation assets are being positioned at static. Behavioral clustering now documented in multiple states. Federal emergency declaration. Static. I drove and listened and thought. For days ago I had been a man in a logistics company polo shirt who paid attention to medication interactions and had a son who remembered the first word he'd ever read. And now I was on a highway in Michigan with that same son and his mother trying to stay ahead of something that was broadcasting on emergency frequencies and sending people to wait on roads near where we were sleeping. The thing about catastrophe is that it doesn't announce itself proportionally. It doesn't send you a signal scaled to how large it actually is. It sends you a voicemail. It sends you a jacket that's the wrong color. It sends you a pause of 3 seconds in a conversation that should have been instant. And if you are paying the right kind of attention at the right moment, you see those things for what they are and you move. And if you're not, you don't. Patricia Hesse had been paying attention for 31 years. She had paid attention for one more day, and it had been enough. At 7:15 we came through a town called Grover Mills, small, maybe 2,000 people, a main street with a hardware store and a diner and a post office. I pulled into the diner parking lot because Owen said he was hungry and because the diner's lights were on and cars were in the lot and I needed to see normal human beings before I lost my ability to calibrate. The diner was called Kettles, red and white vinyl booths, a counter with stools, a chalkboard with the day's specials. A woman in her 60s working the floor with the particular efficiency of someone who had been doing it for decades and had stopped noticing she was doing it. She seated us and handed us laminated menus and said "Coffee hon" in a way that assumed yes. I looked at the other customers. 4 of them. A man alone at the counter reading a paper, 2 women in a booth near the window talking, a young guy in a work vest waiting on a takeout bag. All of them present, blinking, moving. The man at the counter turned his page with a small, absent-minded noise of someone who is only half reading. One of the women laughed at something the other said, a real laugh, asymmetric and uncontrived. I felt something release in my chest that I hadn't known was clenched. Owen ordered pancakes without looking at the menu. I looked at Kara. She looked back at me with something that was not quite relief but was in that neighborhood. The preliminary recognition that we were, for this moment, in a pocket of the world that the thing hadn't reached yet. How far did you drive last night? The waitress said to me, reading the state of us with the practiced eye of someone whose job is to read people in under 10 seconds. From up near the gate road, I said. Had a camp up there. Heading somewhere specific. West, I said. Coast. She refilled my coffee without asking and moved on, and I loved her specifically and completely for those 2 actions. Owen ate his pancakes. He ate them with some of the methodical precision of the past 2 days but also with some of the ordinary Owen commentary that had been missing since Wednesday. He noted that the blueberries were fresh, not frozen, which he approved of. He pointed out that the man at the counter had turned the same page twice, which he found interesting. He asked me how maple syrup was made, which was a question he almost certainly already knew the answer to but wanted to ask because he felt like asking it. He was coming back. Slowly, partially, unevenly. Like a signal pushing through weather. But coming back. I went outside while Kara had him finishing breakfast and called Marcus from the parking lot. I had 2 bars out here, enough. He answered on the first ring. Dan, where are you? Michigan, heading west. We're okay. How bad is it? A pause that told me things before he spoke. It's past Millhaven, he said. The district office closed yesterday. I've been monitoring what I can from my sister's place outside of Columbus. The DOH updates stopped coming around 3 a.m. The last one I got said federal containment protocols had been activated but didn't specify what that meant. What about the school? Dan. The building. What about the building? The district issued a closure notice at 6 p.m. yesterday, he said. Indefinite, for all schools in the county. By the time that went out there was already. The reports on the community channels were. He stopped. Marcus. I don't think the building matters anymore, he said quietly. I stood in the parking lot of Kettle's Diner in Grover Mills, Michigan with 2 bars of service and the smell of coffee coming through the door and the sound of Owen's voice inside asking about maple syrup. What about Joanne Barth? I said. A longer pause. I don't know, he said. I thought about Joanne's voice on the phone. I didn't want to notice that. I thought about Piper sitting at the kitchen table for 2 hours not looking at her phone. Marcus, are you okay? So far, he said. I've been in the house since yesterday morning. My sister and her husband are with me. We're talking about heading east, trying to find one of the coastal evacuation points. Naval assets, I said. They're positioning naval assets. Kara saw it on the DOH feed. The Great Lakes have Coast Guard stations, he said. If we could get to one of the Lake Erie access points. Go, I said. Don't wait for more information. Just go. A brief silence. That's what she said, he said. Your substitute teacher. Don't wait for confirmation. Yeah, I said. Dan. What is it? Do you know what it actually is? I thought about what I knew and what I had inferred, and what I could say with any confidence to a man who was deciding in real time whether to put his sister in a car and drive toward a lake. It's not a disease, I said. Not the way we think of disease. It doesn't kill the host. It changes them. It reorganizes them into something that functions and coordinates and calls, and it spreads through contact and proximity and maybe other ways I don't fully understand yet, and it's moving faster than the official communications are acknowledging. The broadcast, he said. On the emergency frequencies. You've heard it. Since last night, he said. Come home, everything is fine. I've heard it on 6 different channels. Don't go back, I said. Whatever it says, whatever anyone tells you, don't go back. I know, he said. And Marcus, if anyone seems off, the almost is the thing. It looks almost normal and the almost is what you have to trust. We hung up and I stood there for a moment with the phone in my hand and the thin November sun on my face and the weight of the past 4 days organized in my chest like sediment. I went back inside. Owen was drawing something on a paper placemat with a crayon the waitress had given him without being asked. I leaned over to look. He had drawn a map, rough, crayon rendered, but recognizable. A road going north, a smaller road going east, a rectangle that was the camp, a larger shape that was the lake, and to the west, a coastline with the word boat written next to it in capital letters. Where'd you get that idea? I said. Mom was talking about it, he said. The naval boats, if we get to the water they have to pick us up, right? It's a rule. Something like that, I said. Mrs. Linden would say that's an inference skill, he said. I looked up. What? Finding meaning underneath the information you actually have, he said. She taught us that you look at what you know and you figure out what has to be true even if nobody said it directly. He went back to the drawing. I looked at Kara. She was watching Owen with an expression that was difficult to hold in any single category. Grief and relief and something that was purely love in its most stripped-down functional form, the kind that doesn't require conditions or context or anything beyond the fact of the person sitting in front of you with a crayon. We left Kettle's at 8:30. The waitress wished us safe travels in a way that was ordinary and also felt like exactly the right thing. We drove west. The road was quiet, not empty. There were cars, a few trucks, an RV moving with a particular purposeful speed of people who had decided on a direction and committed to it. We passed a state police cruiser on the shoulder with its lights going, and I watched it as we passed, and the officer inside was on his radio with his door open, and he was gesturing the way a person gestures when they're arguing with someone who isn't listening. Human. Frustrated. Still himself. I breathed. 3 hours west of Grover Mills we hit a stretch of highway where the radio stations began to go strange. Not all of them, not suddenly, but incrementally. Country station fine, news station fine, then a pop station that had been playing normal programming that shifted mid-song into a frequency bleed, that same flat layered voice beneath the music, barely audible, "Come home, everything is fine," like a signal bleeding through from somewhere underneath. I turned the radio off. Owen, who had been dozing, opened his eyes. "It's louder here," he said. "The broadcast. The sound," he said. "The one I can almost hear. It's louder here. Does it feel like anything?" He thought about it with the careful consideration of a kid trying to describe something accurately. "It feels like when you're at a birthday party and everyone starts singing happy birthday and you don't want to sing but you kind of start to anyway because everyone else is." I pressed the gas down slightly. "Don't," I said. "You don't have to sing." "I know," he said. "I'm not." He looked out the window at the passing fields. "It's hard though," he said quietly. "I know, Bud, Dad. Do you think Mrs. Hesse is okay?" Patricia Hesse. 31 years of experience. Reading glasses on a beaded chain probably, or something like that, the details I had invented for her from nothing but her voice and her credentials and the particular quality of courage that fits in 41 seconds. "I don't know," I said. "I think she's not," he said. Not unkindly, not dramatically, just with the blunt clarity of a 9-year-old who has stopped letting the adults manage his understanding of what's happening. "But I think she's still somewhere in there too. The way I'm still in here. I think some part of her is still there." I didn't say anything. "I think that's what she was afraid of," he said. "Not disappearing all the way. Being almost herself forever." The road curved west, and the sky above the horizon went from gray to a pale bruised blue, and then to something lighter, thinner, the color of the air over open water. We reached the Lake Michigan shoreline at 2 in the afternoon. A state park access road, closed for the season with a gate that I drove around on the grass, and then a half-mile of empty parking lot, and then the lake itself, iron gray and enormous, the far shore invisible, the horizon a clean line where the water met the low winter sky. There were other cars in the lot, maybe 20. People standing by the water or sitting on their hoods or walking along the shore with the particular purposeless movement of people who have arrived somewhere and aren't sure what to do now that they've arrived. A man in a Coast Guard jacket was walking along the lot talking into a radio. He looked up when we pulled in and raised a hand, not a warning, more an acknowledgement. "I'm here, I see you, you're in the right place." I parked and we got out. The wind off the lake was cold and immediate and smelled like cold water and distance. Owen stood at the edge of the parking lot where the grass gave way to sand and looked out at the water. He was very still. But it was a different kind of stillness than the one I had been watching for 4 days. This was his stillness, the one he'd had since he was 3 years old, the one that meant he was taking something in completely, storing it, adding it to the reference file he kept of things that mattered. Kara stood next to me. "The Coast Guard is coordinating with the Navy," she said quietly. "There's a cutter station 40 miles north. They're running assessment teams to the shore access points along the coast. It'll be a few hours." "He's still hearing it," I said. "I know," she said. "Is it going to?" "I don't know," she said. We stood there with the lake in front of us and 4 days of running behind us and the sound of the other survivors moving quietly in the lot and the Coast Guard man's radio crackling with voices that were still human, still specific, still asking and answering individual questions. Owen turned around. He walked back to me and stood in front of me and looked up with his face that was his face, his specific, particular, irreplaceable face, and said, "I can still hear it." "I know. But I can hear you more," he said. I put my hands on his shoulders. Both of them, the full weight of them. "That's enough," I said. "Right now, that's enough." He nodded, leaned forward slightly, and I pulled him in and held him the way you hold someone when you're not sure what comes next but you are absolutely sure about this moment, this specific moment, this weight in your arms. We were on the water by that evening. A Coast Guard cutter running assessment checks on everyone before boarding, the doctor who cleared Owen spending 40 minutes with him and asking questions and watching his eyes and then looking at me and saying some secondary effects may persist. We're still learning what that means, but he's not acute and we're going to monitor him. And I said thank you in the voice of a person saying thank you for the first time in a week and meaning it in every possible direction at once. The cutter took us to a processing facility on an island in Lake Michigan whose name I am not going to write here. Not for any dramatic reason, just because there are people here who want to be hard to find and I think they've earned that. There are about 400 of us now. The military brings supplies by boat twice a week. The shortwave radio still picks up the broadcast sometimes, on the clearer nights, that same flat layered voice, "Come home, everything is fine." We turn it off when it comes on and we have gotten efficient at turning it off, the way you get efficient at anything you do often enough. Owen started a reading group last month. Not formally, he just started doing it. 5 kids younger than him sitting in the meal hall while he reads to them from whatever books we've been able to collect. He reads to them the way Mrs. Alderman used to read to his class, he told me, which means he does different voices and he stops at the end of chapters and asks them what they think is going to happen next and why they think that. Inference skills, he said, when I asked him about it. Finding the meaning underneath the words. He still hears the sound sometimes. He told me about it once, matter-of-factly, the way he tells me things he has decided to be honest about. He said it gets quieter when he's reading or when he's talking to someone he knows, and louder when he's alone or when it's very quiet at night. He said it feels less like being called toward something now and more like a scar feels, present, noticeable in certain weather, but not the wound itself. I still have Patricia Hess's voicemail. I have not deleted it. I've listened to it 14 times. I know every word of it, and the way her voice changes at each part, and the sound of the door opening in the background, and the moment the line goes dead. She was a woman who had been paying attention for 31 years, and who paid attention for one more day when it mattered more than any of the other days. I still have the olive green jacket in the Ziploc bag. I gave it to the facility's medical team when we arrived and they've been studying it along with the other materials collected from secondary exposure cases. They don't know yet what it tells them but they believe it tells them something and that's enough to keep it from being nothing. I think about the school sometimes. The specific building on Millhaven Road with its long corridors and the class portal login that required a capital letter and a special character and the bulletin board outside the 4th grade room that had a construction paper display about ecosystems that Owen's class had made in September. I think about the woman from Joanne's voice. I didn't want to notice that. And I think about what I didn't do, which was tell her earlier and more directly, and what I couldn't have done, which was known what I didn't know, and I live in the space between those two things the way you live in any space you can't get out of. By moving around in it carefully and not spending too long at any one corner. I think about the trooper I didn't encounter and the roadblock Marcus might face and the white van idling in the parking lot of the Dawson Science Center on a cold morning with its engine running and no one visible inside. I think about Patricia Hesse in the copy room with the door she said she didn't have much time and the phone call she made to a man she'd never met because a 9-year-old boy deserved a chance. She was right about Owen. He was okay. He had missed the primary exposure and the secondary one had touched him but not taken him and every day there is more of him than the day before, more of the kid who wants to know why behind the why, more of the boy who remembered Copernicus the fish and the first word he ever read and the birthday cake with the wrong frosting. I don't know what happened to her. I know what probably happened to her. But Owen said something on the shore of Lake Michigan that I keep coming back to in the way you come back to things that feel like they might be true even after the moment has passed. I think some part of her is still in there. I hope he's right. He usually is. That's the whole story. That's everything I have. We got out because a woman decided the truth was worth the risk of sounding crazy, and because a 9-year-old boy had been homesick on a Tuesday, and because the almost is the thing and if you're paying attention you can still see it. We're still here. We're still us. And every morning when Owen stands in front of those kids with a book in his hands and asks them what they think is going to happen next, I think about Patricia Hesse, and I think, yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly how you survive.